What up, YouTube? It's your boy Banks, and we back in the building. You feel me? It's True Talks, cause True Talks. All right, let's get straight right into it. So you already know, man. Last night was definitely another important game for the Raptors. You know, as these games kind of wind down, and as we go closer and closer to the end of the season. And, you know, the games left get smaller and smaller. You know, every game becomes more crucial and more important, especially in terms of seeding, right? As of now, the Raptors are in the 6th seed and Cleveland is in the 7th seed. They dropped because they've been losing, especially not having Jared Allen. That made a huge difference for them, you know? And, you know, so the Raptors just gaining more traction, gaining more ground, you know, capitalizing on these losses that Cleveland gets, right? Cleveland lost to the Mavs, the games that they lose, and then you win as well in the same day. You know, it just creates more separation in terms of the loss column and just the games back just in the seed and anyways in general. And that's obviously beautiful to see because you don't want to be in a play-in situation because you don't want to even be in a scenario where you could have your worst nightmare. Just like how, you know, the Golden State Warriors had that last year where they were their 8th seed. They lost the first game to the Lakers and they lost the second game to the Grizzlies. Then they didn't even make the playoffs, right? So that's the worst case scenario, and it's very possible that you just go on a 2-game losing streak, especially in a 1-1 situation. You know what I mean? It's anything can happen. So you don't want to put yourself in that scenario. So for the Raptors to just gain traction and gain these wins and gain separation and keep themselves at least in the 6th seed. And now you look at it with the Bulls losing as well. Teams are like, these certain teams are just losing at the wrong times. You know, it's playoff push and every team is trying. Maybe teams are getting exposed, etc. But for the most part, like you see the Bulls losing again as well too. And now the Raptors are tied. I'm pretty sure they're tied with them in the standings. And they could even end up going to be in the 5th seed. The 4th seed is probably unlikely, but getting the 5th seed is definitely possible. They're tied right now with the Bulls 44 and 32. So if the Bulls lose the next one, let's say Raptors win the next one, then they jump to 5th seed. And now your matchups is changing with every game that you play and every game that you move in the seeding, your matchup now, your playoff matchup is changing, right? Same thing with Philly, Miami, Boston with the top 4. They're switching every game, right? So, you know, you're probably not going to know who you're going to face to the last day of the regular season or the day before, the game before. But for the most part, like, just the Raptors have to secure what they need to secure, which is not being in the play-in, right? And so them being the 6th seed is ideal, especially with Philly being the 3rd seed. But I think that the Raptors could beat anybody. I think the Raptors could beat Bulls. I think they could. The only 2 teams I think the Raptors will struggle with and most likely not beat, and I'll be surprised if they beat them, is probably the Celtics and the Nets. And I still think that the Celtics is still a toss-up in terms of just, and the reasons why I say this is because having 2 shot creators at that high elite level and you don't really have that to match that, it's not going to necessarily be a team versus team play. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be like they could literally kill and take your soul and, you know, take your heart out off those 2 guys, you know, KD and Kyrie. And, well, you know, if they play in the playoffs, you know, with the vaccine, again, they won't have them on the road, but they'll have them at home. In 4 games, they could win 4 games with Kyrie. You know what I'm saying? And then you look at it with Boston Celtics, having Tatum and Brown as the shot creating, you know, monsters that they are. I don't see the Raptors overcoming that. But when you look at the Bulls, I know that they have Levine and DeRozan. I don't know if DeRozan, you know, we still have to wait and see. I don't know if he is that in the playoffs. We still have to wait and see because that's been his woes. That's been his, you know, that's been his nemesis. That's been his kryptonite, the playoffs. So, you know, we don't know. Again, is Levine enough just for you to overcome, right? The whole point of the Bulls is having Levine and DeRozan at a high octane level, like having how you have KD and Kyrie, how you have Tatum and Brown, right? So if DeRozan is not up to par, it's not the same, right? So there, I don't know, and I don't, you know what I mean? Facing them, maybe you could force and you could create havoc again. And again, DeRozan is still only majority mid-ranges in the playoffs. You know what I mean? you have to wait and kind of see, but for the most part, it's not undefeatable when you look at it from that perspective. The Sixers, you already know how I feel. Even though they have those two guys, I don't think those two guys are those two guys in the playoffs, right? In terms of Embiid and Harden. With the Bucks, again, I think that the wall and just the way Nurse coaches, I think that they have a 50-50 chance versus the Bucks. The Miami Heat, again, they don't have those two shot creating, monsters. Butler is hit or miss sometimes. Obviously, he could at his best. You seen what he did even in the bubble and stuff like that. And even outside of it, you see what he did with the Sixers. You've seen multiple times what he has done in big moments. Butler plays out-of-body experiences. Like, that's what he does. But it's only him. Is Hero going to always be that? You know what I mean? Who else is their shot-creating guy? Oladipo, you already know he's just coming back. Like, Bam, you already know he plays, but it's still within his role and how he kind of gets it on handoffs and whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, it's more so a team play when you look at Miami. All these, even with the Bucks, when you look at him, it's more so a team play with those two guys, kind of head of the snake, but it's still team play where Boston, Brooklyn have those two guys, even if the team is sussing. Those two guys are so dynamic that they could overcome even when the team is sussing. You have to deal with them, and they're unguardable, especially in KD and Kyrie. And then with Tatum and Brown, when they're clicking, it's very similar, right? Not to the same magnitude, but it's still, those two shot creating killers that could be unguardable in any given night. You see Tatum can have 50s, had it in the playoffs, even versus the Nets. So for me, anybody in the East, I think the Raptors could actually beat. But in terms of Brooklyn and Boston, those are the two you want to avoid. But again, if they get to the 5th seed, I still think that it's a toss-up with Boston, But for most part, everybody else, I think Raptors have a chance, a very viable chance, solid chance. So when you look at it from that perspective, man, the seeding is going to change each and every day. But for the most part, again, last night, great win for the Raptors. And let's talk about, first we're going to talk about some of the positives, right? We're very quickly, right? I don't want to make this too long, but the positives that you have, in terms of like OG and Trent coming back to form, especially OG, right? I love what I was seeing from OG, just catching and shooting with no fear, catching and shooting with great intentions, good intentions, and just once he caught it, you just boom, boom, fluid motion. No hesitancy. And you can see he's getting into a groove over the last couple of games, especially last game now that just happened. It was him and Trent for the most part, especially in the first half, that was keeping the Raptors above ground, keeping the Raptors at bay with the Wolves, right? So especially when the Wolves came out the gate, killing. And, with Pascal struggling and, VanVleet struggling, OG and Trent doing that was very needed. If they didn't do that, the Raptors probably wouldn't even have gotten the courage and the fight to actually muster up a run to now win the game, because for them to get a run, they had to be even in a close proximity to now be like, okay, now we turn on the Jets, right? Defensively, start pushing in transition, and the game turned around, right? In the third quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then fourth quarter beginning was just straight blowout, right? But the second quarter and third quarter is when the Raptors really killed the Wolves, right? And when you look at it, it's just OG and Trent were killing. Trent obviously shot creating, catching and shooting. Man's doing reverse pivots. Like, you just elite ability, right? You love to see it, from Trent. And then OG again, just showing, 4 for 4 from 3-point line. Trent 6 for 8 from 3-point line. That's going to get it done. If those two guys are doing that, both 9 for 13, 22 points for OG, 29 points for Trent, like, that's going to get it done. You know what I'm saying? That's going to definitely get it done. And, bruh, just what elite looks like. So I love to see that from both of those guys. Like, those two guys are like the shooters, like, and the creators. Like, when those two guys are thriving, the Raptors, for the most part, are always in the game or even ahead for the most part. VanVleet is, something like, especially lately, he's been hit or miss. And even the games that he's been missing, he'll have stretches where he's hitting. And then it's like, okay, it propels the Raptors, right? That's what happened in this game. Even though he was 5 for 15, the 5 shots that he was snapping and hitting were kind of all bunched up together. They weren't like spaced out sporadically. It's kind of like he goes on modes where he's like, okay, he's cooking right now, right? Even though he struggled for the whole game, for the most part, only had 12 points. But, he goes on runs, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, those three guys are the shooters, right? If one is off, that's okay. But if two is on, especially OG and Trent, because, VanVleet is in scenarios where he does more than just shoot. So even if he's off, he's getting bare assists. Like you see him as 8 assists. You know what I mean? The defense is focused on him. He's getting trapped in the PNR, bounce pass to this guy, chain reaction. Like, he's doing multiple things, especially as a focal point of the offense, that he doesn't necessarily have to be snapping for the Raptors to even be in a groove and to be on a string and just just moving at a high octane level offensively. But OG and Trent as shooters and shot creators, and that's mainly what they're doing, playing off the ball. They're not really ball handling and just creating for majority of the possessions offensively. They're kind of in the back end, coming off pin downs, spacing out, catching and shooting, cut here and there, etc. Transition. Like, they have to be always operating at a high efficiency level. You know what I mean? That's for the most part, especially if you want to they're the shooters. They're the ones spacing on the floor. Man, you don't want to let the defense get away with helping and shrinking the floor. They're already going to shrink the floor off Scotty and shrink the floor off Pascal. You need those guys being able to hit, so the space and the floor just opens up. So then now you can help off certain guys, but you can't help off this guy. Or then if they do, you make them pay. So they're going to get majority of their buckets and their takes in catch and shoot, off ball scenarios, pump fake, one dribble. Like, they're going to get it off the ball, right? So they have to be hitting on, on a high cylinder, because again, if they're doing that, it changes, and it changes the way the offense and the spacing of the floor, and that's their best way to dictate and have their imprint on the game, from basically hitting in a space out scenario, playing off the ball, and et cetera, right? If they're off, the imprint and the impact that they have on the game drastically drops. Yes, they could get steals and deflection or whatever, but if they're not hitting offensively, their impact drastically changes, as opposed to, like I said, VanVleet, if he's not hitting offensively, he's still diamond, he's still doing other things, right? So it's very crucial and very vital that OG and Trent is hitting. And if they are hitting, that's when the Raptors are going to, you see them score 125, and they're going to be on the best version of themselves offensively. So that's why hitting for them is very important and very crucial. So I always look at that, and I always want to see them do that and see how is their rhythm. How are they moving now, especially during this last stretch, like them getting a rhythm and getting back into that groove, especially Trent. You know what I mean? That's beautiful to see, and that's very needed, especially for playoff basketball. So, you love to see that, and that's obviously the glaring, blatant positive, right, that you see right out the gate, especially from last game. But again, the negative that I don't like is VanVleet has to, man. Like, he has to get back to all-star form. Scotty's going to do what he's going to do. Some games he's going to snap. Some game, he's just going to play within the flow. He's a flow maker for right now. You know what I'm saying? He just, take advantage of the flow and play based on the flow. Some games he's not going to be as aggressive because the flow doesn't dictate that. He's just going to read and react, and it's beautiful to see. That's exactly how Draymond kind of moves, on a game-to-game basis. And that's what Scotty's going to move. Like, he's not going to be every game 15 shots, right? It's going to be dependent on the flow of the game, depending on how Mans is playing. Transition, do we get enough of it? Am I only the one in transition? Am I now do I have a mismatch? Like, there's so many things that kind of have to play into how, it determines and dictates his aggression, right? So he's just going to be himself, and that's what you want, right? But for the most part, when you look at it for VanVleet, like, he's been struggling, man. He's been struggling, and, he has some game, like, you look at it, 5 for 15, 12 points. Boston, 4 for 13. Then Indiana, 2 for 4. He only played his small minutes, 17, so we won't count that. The game before, 4 for 9, then 7 for 22, 8 for 19, 7 for 17, 3 for 14, 3 for 11. The only good, decent one was 7 for 15, But for the most part, he's been struggling, and, it's been a long stretch of struggle. So you don't want to see that. On the flip side, it's positive that he's having his struggle now, and he's getting it out the way, that maybe by playoff time, he snaps into it and snaps back. But on the other side of the coin, it could be that, damn, this is the worst time to have your struggle. When are you going to get a groove back? It doesn't just sometimes just flip in the playoffs, or now you get your groove back, especially when you're not on that kind of caliber, like the Kyrie caliber, Steph caliber, where it's like at any time you could just, you know what I mean? Even though he can, but it's like, is that more guaranteed? Is that for certain, right? We don't know, right? We've seen, and especially at a focal point of the offense, not in a scenario where he can snap at any time when he was playing with Kawhi and he's playing on the back end of the focal point of, people aren't focusing on him in the game plan. So at any time he can have a game where he just snaps, like you've seen in the finals, etc. versus the Bucks, right? But he's the number one option. If you're getting double teamed, they're forcing the ball in your hands and forcing you to like your worst shot scenarios and stuff like that. When are you really going to just snap out of it and just like this? When you're always going to be in a harder situation. You know what I'm saying? Offensively. So that's the other side of the coin. So, and that is more relative to this scenario, right? In terms of VanVleet. Like, he needs to get back to his all-star form. You know what I mean? You don't want people feeling like it was just luck or it was just like a solid stretch and that was it. This is who he really is. Like, you don't want that feeling at all. So VanVleet, it's very vital for him to get back to that elite form, that elite play. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, he still does other things on the court, high assists most of the games, right? So it's not like shooting is everything and all for VanVleet. But again, it's very important, and it changes and dictates a lot of the Raptors offense. When he's hitting, bruh, it opens it up, especially for Scottie and Pascal, opens it up drastically for them. Because now in their PNRs, and guys like Precious, Boucher, guys setting the screen, now they get way easier buckets. You know what I mean? Because, and the shots that they get or the middies that they get or that guy cutting now is so many chain reaction because you're trapped in the PNR because you're cooking. Like, it just opens up everything. So when you look at it from that perspective, man, I just need VanVleet to get back to his bag, get back to his ability, get back to his, high octane offense that he was, putting out in the all-star break and just being an all-star. So, you want him to, you need your all-star to always be their all-star. Always in, you heard Shaq say it. Your all-stars, your superstars have to rise their level of play in the playoffs. If you average 20, you better average 25. If you average 23, you better average 28. Like, you got to rise your level of play because your role players, a lot of them they're going to waver, especially with the bright lights. Some role players are going to play elite at home, then on the road they're not going to play as elite, or some might only play elite on the road, not play. Like, they're going to be flip-floppy game by game. It's not guaranteed that that's why they're role players. It's not guaranteed that they're just going to be cooking, or else there will be superstars. They're going to be role players. They're going to have some games where they're snapping. They're going to have some games and a lot of games where they're just very regular. They can't create. They're not getting opportunities, not getting looks. There's no rhythm, right? It's on the superstars and the all-stars to rise their level of play because they're going to be focused on, everyone's in tune. You're going to have to create. You're going to have to make tough shots. You know what I mean? You have to rise your level of play and take over. Put the team on your shoulder. That's the difference. Literally in all these teams winning and losing. It comes down to your superstars and your stars. Always does. Always does. It always does. And then the more you snap, the easier it is for now that guy to just shoot spot ups. It's easier for him to now, make the 1-2 crucial play and the 1-2 vital play and, just have a 10, 15 point performance. It's easier when they're looking to the shoulder, looking to the left and the right. Okay, he's snapping. He has 30. He's killing. I just need to help you out and make this 1-2 shot now that you're triple teamed, right? Stuff like that. So, VanVleet is definitely the number one, number two. He's the top tier option for the Raptors. So he has to get to that groove and has to get to that point. So that's obviously one side of it. And then the next one, I know a lot of y'all, oh my God, Joey's on this guy. Pascal. Let's really talk about it. And, Pascal has been eating. The last game before this versus Celtics, he had 41. But again, for me, it's never just about the points you have. It's about how you got your points and can it translate to big games when man's locking. And I told you, I talked about this before. Every time when no defender with length, Pascal's going to eat. First, the Boston Celtics, when he had, who did he have? Grant Williams on him. Daniel Tice was on him. Like, for the majority of the game, especially with no Tatum and Brown, that's who was guarding him. No Marcus Smart, like that's who was guarding him. So he has way more length and more foot speed than Grant Williams, and then has not more length than Tice, but has more foot speed than Tice. So it's a mismatch in both scenarios, which is why he had 40 points with no three. 40 points with no three, 17 for 29, whatever it was. All paint, mid-range takes. He only had 2 mid-range jumpers. The rest was paint takes. Hey, spin, layup, bump, floater. Like, it was all paint takes. So when you look at it from that perspective, yes, it's great that he had a 40 piece. You know what I mean? Credit to him, all that type of stuff, you know? But I'm dissecting it. Again, you always know me. It's not about the numbers. It's not about, the stats. It's not about all of that type of stuff when I critique Pascal. It's about your confidence and how you move depending on who's guarding you in advantageous situations versus, situations that aren't favorable as much. How do you move? How do you force? How do you shot create? How do you put your will, imprint your will on the game and imprint your will on, you can't guard me with your pride and just one-on-one mano-a-mano, right? What are you doing? Okay, when you're confident, you're in this bag and you're shooting and you're looking like a different man, what's behind that confidence? Is it an everyday confidence or is it just dependent in scenarios, right? And that's what's always been my critique about Pascal and just dissecting how he moves the psyche and just the mentality behind his game in these moments and in these scenarios. So when you look at it again, versus the Celtics with no defender with length, short defenders with no foot speed, or the defender that has length doesn't have great foot speed. So when I say defender with length, it's the perfect combination with length, athleticism, and great defense. Those are the guys he struggled with, like you've seen in this game versus Vanderbilt. He has length. He's similar to like the Giannis, the Bams. Like he has 6'8", 6'9", 6'7", whatever length. Great mobility, great, moving his feet. You're not just going to beat me off blow-bys. You're not just going to float over my beam. I can contest it because I'm athletic. Like, you have to actually shot create. You have to kill me with actually, like, skill. You can't just overwhelm me with speed. You can't overwhelm me with just your length. And you can't You can't overwhelm me with just athleticism. You have to use IQ, pump fakes, shimmy. You have to kill me with moves. You have to beat me with skill. Which is why Kyrie's unguardable, no matter who's guarding him. Which is why KD's unguardable, no matter who's guarding him. Right? It's stuff like that. So when you look at it from that perspective, you've seen him struggle versus the Wolves. Why did he go 5 for 15 in this game? It wasn't just he was getting double teamed the whole time. They did trap and dig and recover. Pat Bev was doing it, right? Guys were doing it. But when he had Nas Reed on him, that's defender with length. He has good foot speed. When Towns is on him, when Vanderbilt is on him, he had defenders with length on him in multiple versions, multiple scenarios. That's why he's passing more. He's not going up with every take, or when he's going up, it's contested. Like, it's not easy takes. So now it affects his threes because he's already not. You notice that with Pascal when he has defender with length, he doesn't splash the threes. The Pascal is reverse. He's normally, when he's killing in the paint and he's confident and he has mismatches and he's eating off those, now it trickles down to his shooting on the perimeter. Now he shoots it with confidence. He's not going to have a defender with length on him, and if they sag off of him, he's going to shoot it with confidence. No, he doesn't do that. Anytime he has a defender where he's struggling to even get to his spots and get to like scoring in those scenarios, it's going to now affect his shooting because he's overthinking and he's not comfortable, right? As opposed to, and so even if they're not guarding him at 3-point line, they sag off, he's in his own head and he's going to miss those shots. That's Pascal, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, this is why I'm like, it's hard to praise when he has these big games and whatever. Because even when he has those games and he has skill, when you look deeper, why is he displaying skill this time? It's always like, oh my God, is this the new Pascal? He's a superstar right now. He's killing. And then the next game, he doesn't even apply that ability at all. Only for like 2 shots. Why is it drastic differences in when he's on and when he's off? Why? You have to look at it. That's why you can't just focus on the fact that he's cooking. Oh my God, this is Pascal. Like, why does he always waver like that? Because you have to look at why he's cooking. You have to look at the deeper level context and that IQ. That's what I do. And that's what I try to provide. So you could kind of just see like the mentality behind him cooking. So when you look at that, that's why now in big games, when there's great defenders and stuff like that, he's most of the time, 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, gonna struggle. And that's why VanVleet killing. Now if VanVleet's struggling and he has to just create his own offense off the bounce, he's gonna struggle even more. But if VanVleet's eating, he's just getting it in rows and in transition, then it's not gonna matter if it's a defender with length or not, right? But that's not how it always goes. So, when you look at it for the most part, man, it's tough. It's tough. That's why I say it's frustrating when I watch Pascal and it's frustrating because you want him to be that guy when he's displaying his confidence and he's just killing with skill and just displaying what elite looks like. And it's like he doesn't display what elite looks like all the times when it's what elite looks like. He doesn't display it. So, you know what I mean? It's just a mentality thing. And that's why it's hard to like, that's why he's always going to forever waver. I don't know if you'll ever see the day where he's just guaranteed this is who Pascal is now. Always skill displaying. Even if he's missing, he's still displaying the skill and shooting with confidence. He's just missing shots today, right? You don't get that from Pascal. You don't get he's just missing shots today. You get he's playing completely different. And that shows you the mentality, the mindset. It just dictates how he plays. It's just he's dependent on, situation. He's really dependent on situation. So that's why it's like, damn, I can foresee him in the playoffs doing the same shit he did in the bubble. I can foresee it, especially if they face the wrong matchup where they have a defender with length. It could be a wrap because when Pascal goes to work, the Raptors win majority of those games. His impact and just him killing, he wins majority of the games because now you have to pay attention. You have to dig on him when he has a mismatch. So now when he passes out and he gets high assists, threes galore. Like, you know what I mean? When Pascal's on his P's and Q's and when he's eating, it always helps the Raptors the Raptors are beneficiaries of that. 100%. It benefits them to the max. So, you know what I mean? When he's not and he's just wasted opportunities, getting turnovers, it's just a chain reaction. The Raptors struggle normally in those stretches. And then now when he doesn't get the rock, and now they're going to OG, VanVleet's driving and kicking, they're killing in transition, VanVleet's getting steals. Now it's just OG, Trent, splashy. Pascal here and there, but for the most part, it's those guys. Now you see the run happen. So, that's what I was skeptical. That's why even with the game the other day with the 40 piece, and everyone was praising it. And I saw it because again, I was in my rec league. I came back and I saw it, and I'm like, bro, this 40 piece, I should have known. Boston doesn't have defender with length, especially with Tatum not being there and Brown and Smart, because they don't really have defender with length. Well, Tatum, is that, but Brown and Smart will normally guard him, and they're just so physical, and they're in his grill, and he can't really just shoot over the top because they're just defensively, there. And even when he shoots over the top or tries to float over the top and stuff like that in the paint, Jaylen Brown's jumping, and Grant Williams Robert Williams is there punching it, and Jaylen Brown is contesting it. Now not having Robert Williams for the Celtics, that changes everything. So maybe it's favorable matchup for the Raptors to play the Celtics. You never know, especially because Pascal could just run into the paint OD. But for the most part, that's how he was scoring his 40. I looked at it, I'm like, dog, this is not it. Yes, he scored 40, but like seeing what Pascal that time he had 38 when he was cooking. I forgot what team it was. I just did it the other day when he was cooking. A little bit. I think it was the Cavs when he had marketing on him, and he had Kevin Love on him, and he had these guys on him who are weak defenders, even though they have length, and he just splashed and killed him when he had Mobley on him padded. But for the most part, when those guys were on him and babies were on him and Garland and whoever, he's eating. And then what happens? Especially when marketing was on him. Then what happens? 40 piece. He's eating all in the paint. Look at the drastic difference between that 40 piece and the 38 piece. That 38 piece felt like he had 50 because of the skill he was displaying. That 40 piece was just paint mash. There's difference in those two buckets, in those two games. There's a complete difference. Why is it a difference? Why? And that's what I'm trying to say. If he was really that guy, he would always have, his shots and all of that, his games where he's snapping will always be in the same realm. Obviously, some games is like they're not guarding you properly, so you get more layups, But for the most part, it's not like you had to resort to that. The game just dictated that. Pascal is not doing it. He forces that when he knows he has a mismatch. Okay, I'm going to that, which is the game dictating it. But now when the game don't dictate it, can you still snap? He doesn't now. And that's the difference. And it's just, I know it sounds like a broken record. I know y'all been hearing me talk about this time and time again. But I'm doing a highlight of highlighting this and just talking about it because, again, playoffs is near. We don't know what matchup we're going to face. Playoffs is near. I'm kind of giving a warning. So y'all could really, don't get your hopes up thinking that this is a whole new superstar Pascal, and don't get your hopes up. Again, I would want Pascal to thrive. I would want him to get over the playoff woes. I would want him to be that new Pascal where he's shot creating at all times. Doesn't mean he doesn't go to the paint at all. Obviously, he goes to the paint, but he's a perfect balance of just, you know what I mean? He has no fear. He's just killing at any time. Can pull the midi at any time. Okay, that guy sagged up. I'm going to he's not even overthinking nothing. He's just playing freely, but thinking with IQ and just being confident with IQ and just, taking advantage of scenarios. Not wasting opportunities. But then when you look, that's what I would want. That's ideal. But then when you look at what's been transpiring, is that going to happen? Most likely not. So then that's why I'm giving my warnings. That's why I sound like a broken record. I'm repeating and repeating and repeating. Don't get your hopes up. Don't think come on, playoffs is here. Playoffs is coming. Just like they said, winter is coming. Playoffs is coming, fam. Don't get it twisted. So, those are the negative things that kind of you have to look deeper into, that this game kind of just has been another addition on the highlight reel of, okay, we're worried about this in terms of VanVleet and Pascal. If those two guys aren't on their A1 since day one in the playoffs, it's going to be a long first round for the Raptors. Don't get it twisted. As much as I'm saying Pascal or whatever, he has to be killing. He's the focal point. Him and VanVleet are focal points of the Raptors. They just are. Trent, OG, Scotty, they get it in the back end, which is why they're not always guaranteed 30. They're not always guaranteed 25. They get it dictated by a game-by-game basis. Pascal and VanVleet are guaranteed focal point, ball handling. They're guaranteed in terms of their usage every game. So if they're not killing, you're putting yourself in a more unfavorable scenario and situation of overcoming and winning, especially when you're already the underdogs in any series you're going to play, especially if you stay as a 6th seed. No matter what team you face, they're a 3rd seed or above. You're in an underdog scenario, so you can't waste opportunities. You can't, you know what I mean? You can't have bad nights from multiple guys. Now your top 2 guys are always guaranteed bad nights. That's what was happening with the DeRozan and Lowry scenarios when they were having bad nights and just horrendous. That's why it's guaranteed losses. When your top 2 guys are moving Fugazi, how you expect them to win those games? With Vasquez snapping and role players trying to play out-of-body experiences, that's not guaranteed. Role players aren't supposed to carry you to wins. They're supposed to carry you to wins in doing 1-2 crucial things, but for the most part, you're always there guaranteed as the superstar or the main guy. So, anyways, you already know. It's True Talks. It's True Talks. Share, like, and subscribe. We out here. There's no doubt here. There's no drought here. You feel me? I appreciate y'all. You already know. Click that notification button so you know when I'm here. Because I'm here. You already know, man. We're winding down. Get into the stretch to the last point of things, man. We'll see how it pans out. But for the most part, the Raptors have to. They have to, man. They have to take advantage and keep winning and winning and winning and just secure the spot. Secure the 6th seed, at least. No play-in. And then move from there. And then, whatever team kind of falls at your hand in a 3rd seed, you just deal with it. You deal with it and you game plan. And then, hopefully VanVleet and Pascal are moving on a high octane level, higher echelon. And then you can get the job done. You already know. And Nurse will always be on his P's and Q's. You feel me? He's always ready. So, for the most part, we'll see what elite looks like. You already know. I appreciate y'all. Again, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. You already know. And I'm out, man.